Shadows of Rebellion ## Chapter 1. The Quiet Storm. The neon-lit alleyways of New Helios cast fractured shadows across the faces of three figures huddled in the doorway of an abandoned electronics shop. To any passing Dominion patrol, they appeared to be nothing more than scavengers picking through the ruins of humanity's former commercial district. But beneath their tattered cloaks, each carried weapons that could level a city block, and in their eyes burned the cold fire of revolution. While humanity fights in the open, a new battle brews in the shadows. Resistance cells, scattered across the galaxy, have waged their own war against the Dominion for years, and now, their time is approaching. Victory is close, but only if they can strike where it hurts the most. Chen pressed her back against the cold metal wall as a Dominion hover patrol drifted past, its searchlight sweeping the alley with mechanical precision. The alien craft's sensors could detect heat signatures, movement patterns, even elevated heart rates, but they couldn't detect the revolutionary spirit that pulsed through the veins of every human in hiding. 3 blocks away, in the basement of what had once been a university library, Commander Elara Voss studied holographic displays showing Dominion troop movements across 17 star systems. Her fingers traced the glowing pathways of supply convoys, communication relays, and military installations with the precision of a surgeon planning a delicate operation. "Status report," she said without looking up from the tactical display. "Cell 7 successfully disrupted the communication array on Kepler Station," reported Lieutenant Kai Nakamura, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Dominion's been flying blind in that sector for 6 hours now, and the mining operation on Proxima 3, complete power grid failure. Marcus Cain's team did it without losing a single operative." Nakamura's smile was grim but satisfied. "The Dominion's productivity in that sector has dropped by 40%. Elara nodded, her weathered face reflecting the blue glow of the holographic displays. Once she had worn the uniform of the Dominion Navy, had believed in their vision of galactic order. That faith had died the day she witnessed the systematic execution of human children on Colony World Epsilon Savona cleansing operation, designed to eliminate what the Dominion called genetic impurities. The memory still haunted her dreams, but it had also forged her into something the Dominion hadn't anticipated, a weapon turned against its creator. "The Dominion thinks they're fighting a war," Elara said, her voice carrying the weight of years spent in the shadows. "They're wrong. They're fighting a reckoning." Across the galaxy, on the industrial moon of Titan's Rest, General Marcus Cain crouched in the ventilation shaft of a Dominion processing facility. Below him, alien workers moved with the efficiency of insects, processing raw materials that would become weapons, armor, and ships for the Dominion war machine. Each piece of equipment represented human lives that would be lost in the ongoing conflict. Not if he could help it. Cain's team had infiltrated the facility 3 days ago, posing as maintenance workers. They'd spent that time carefully placing micro-explosives at critical structural points, timing their placement to coincide with shift changes when the fewest lives would be lost. The Dominion might be their enemy, but Marcus Cain had no desire to become the monster he fought against. "Time is set," whispered Specialist Torres through the com. "We've got 12 minutes to extraction." Cain nodded, his grizzled face set in lines of determination. 12 minutes to cripple a facility that supplied weapons to 3 Dominion battle fleets. 12 minutes to save thousands of human lives. 12 minutes to prove that David could still bring down Goliath with the right stone and perfect aim. The resistance had been growing for months, fed by a steady stream of refugees from destroyed human colonies and fueled by the kind of righteous anger that could move mountains. They had no grand fleets, no massive armies, no orbital bombardment platforms. What they had was something far more dangerous, the absolute conviction that they had nothing left to lose. In hidden bunkers and abandoned buildings, in the cargo holds of merchant vessels and the forgotten corners of space stations, humanity's shadow war was being planned, one careful strike at a time. Every sabotaged power grid, every disrupted communication array, every disabled weapons facility was a message written in fire and darkness. "We are still here, we are still fighting, and we are coming for you." ## Chapter 2. The rise of the resistance, humanity's hidden fighters in the shadows. They fight. They have no armies, no fleets, no overwhelming firepower. What they have is the power of unity, the desire for revenge, and the will to see the Dominion fall. Elara Voss, Marcus Cain, and others lead their movements from the dark, preparing for the day when they will take the fight to the heart of the Dominion itself. The emergency meeting took place in the cargo bay of a decommissioned freighter drifting In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, officially, the vessel was listed as space debris, just another casualty of the war that had ravaged the solar system. In reality, it served as a mobile command center for the largest resistance cell in human space. Commander Elara Voss materialized in the center of the bay as a shimmering hologram, her image projected from a secure location 3 star systems away. Around her, similar projections appeared resistance leaders from across the galaxy, each one a ghost in the machine of Dominion control. "We've been fighting in isolation for too long," Elara began, her voice carrying clearly through the quantum-encrypted communication channel. "The Dominion thinks they're dealing with random terrorist cells. It's time to show them the truth, Genera." Marcus Cain's weathered face appeared to her left, his image flickering slightly due to interference from the mining facility where he was hidden. "My people have been tracking Dominion supply movements for months. We've identified 17 critical choke points where a coordinated strike could cripple their logistics network, and I've been cultivating assets within their communication hierarchy," added Dr. Sarah Kim, her youthful appearance belying her reputation as humanity's most skilled cyber warfare specialist. "We can create a cascade failure in their command structure, but only if we hit multiple targets simultaneously." The projections shifted and realigned as more resistance leaders joined the conference. There was Captain Rodriguez from the Europa Underground, whose fighters had been conducting urban warfare in the ice tunnels beneath the moon's surface. Commander Singh from the outer colonies, whose raiders had been striking at Dominion mining operations with devastating effectiveness. Lieutenant Commander Park from the deep space monitoring stations, whose intelligence network had penetrated the highest levels of Dominion military command. Each leader had their own story of loss, their own reasons for joining the resistance. Rodriguez had watched his family die in the bombardment of Lunar City. Singh had seen his entire colony enslaved and shipped off to work camps in the Dominion core worlds. Park had been forced to transmit targeting data for the orbital bombardment of her own homeworld, but they all shared one thing: the unbreakable conviction that the Dominion would pay for every life they had taken, every world they had destroyed, every dream they had crushed beneath their boots. "The open war has given us opportunities," Elara continued, bringing the discussion back to tactical matters. "While the Dominion focuses on battling our fleets, their rear areas have become vulnerable. Security has been shifted to frontline positions, leaving their infrastructure exposed." She gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show a 3-dimensional map of Dominion space. Red dots marked military installations, blue lines showed supply routes, and yellow clusters indicated communication hubs. To the untrained eye, it looked like a constellation of stars. To the resistance leaders, it was a target-rich environment waiting to be exploited. "Phase 1 will focus on communication disruption," Elara explained. "We'll hit their quantum relays simultaneously across 12 systems. The resulting chaos will mask our movements for Phase 2, which is," asked Captain Rodriguez. "Supply line interdiction. We'll strike at their logistics network, targeting fuel depots, ammunition stores, and equipment manufacturing facilities. The goal is to create shortages that will force them to divert resources from the front lines." General Cain nodded approvingly. "Classic guerrilla warfare. Hit them where they're weak, make them spread their forces thin, then hit them again when they try to respond." "Exactly," Elara confirmed. "But this is just the beginning. Once we've weakened their infrastructure and disrupted their command structure, we'll be ready for Phase 3. The holographic map zoomed in on a single star system at the heart of Dominion space. The planet that appeared was a massive world of gleaming cities and orbital platforms, protected by layer upon layer of defensive systems. It was the Dominion homeworld, the seat of their empire, the source of their power. "The final strike," whispered Dr. Kim. "We're actually going to do it. We're going to end this war," Elara said firmly. "Not just survive it, not just resist it, end it. But it will require everything we have, and it will demand sacrifices that some of us may not be willing to make." The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of unspoken understanding. They all knew the price of revolution. They had all paid it in blood, in loss, in the slow erosion of everything they had once held dear. But they also knew that some prices were worth paying. Some sacrifices were necessary to ensure that future generations would never have to endure what they had endured. "I need to know," Elara said quietly. "Are you with me? Not just for revenge, not just for survival, but for victory, for the complete liberation of humanity from Dominion rule." One by one, the resistance leaders nodded their agreement. Some did so with grim determination, others with the fierce joy of warriors finally given the chance to strike back. but all of them understood that they were crossing a line from which there could be no return. The Shadow War was about to become something far more dangerous, a coordinated campaign of liberation that would either free humanity from dominion, rule, or destroy the resistance entirely in the attempt. Chapter 3: The Covert Strikes. Disrupting Dominion control. The Dominion's grip on the galaxy is tightening, but in the shadows, humanity strikes, sabotage, subversion, and surprise, each blow weaker than the last, but when combined, they make the Dominion feel the sting of retribution. They can't stop what they can't see. The Dominion communication relay on Kepler Station had been operational for 7 years, a crystalline spire that transmitted military orders across 3 star systems with quantum-encrypted precision. Tonight it would become the most expensive firework in the galaxy. Specialist Maya Chen crawled through the maintenance tunnel beneath the relay platform, her modified environmental suit masking her heat signature from the automated security scanners. Behind her, 2 other resistance fighters followed in single file, each carrying enough shaped charges to level a city block. "Sentry patrol in 60 seconds, whispered her partner, Jackson Torres, his voice barely audible through the movement patterns suggest they're following standard protocol. Maya nodded, though he couldn't see her in the darkness. Standard protocol was exactly what they were counting on. The Dominion's arrogance had made them predictable, their certainty of superiority leading them to rely on automated systems and routine procedures. It was a weakness that humanity had learned to exploit with surgical precision. She reached the junction box that controlled the relay's primary power coupling, and began the delicate process of bypassing the security lockouts. Her fingers moved, with practiced efficiency, muscle memory guiding her through procedures she had performed dozens of times in simulations. The Resistance had learned early that improvisation was a luxury they couldn't afford. Every operation had to be planned, rehearsed, and executed with clockwork precision. 30 seconds, Torres warned. Maya's tools clicked softly as she completed the bypass. The relay's protective shields would drop in exactly 4 minutes, giving them a narrow window to plant the charges and escape before the explosion. Too early, and the automated systems would detect the intrusion. Too late, and they'd be caught. In the blast radius, she attached the first charge to the primary power conduit, its magnetic clamps securing it in place with a soft snap. The device was no larger than her fist, but it contained enough concentrated energy to punch through 3 meters of reinforced armor plating. The Resistance had learned to be creative with their limited resources. Movement, Torres hissed, froze, her hand halfway to the second charge. Through the tunnel's thin walls, she could hear the distinctive hum of a Dominion patrol drone, its sensors sweeping the area with methodical precision. The maintenance tunnel was shielded, but if the drone detected any anomalous readings, she forced herself to breathe slowly, counting heartbeats as the drone passed overhead. The Resistance had taught her that fear was a luxury she couldn't afford, but it was also a tool that could keep her alive if properly controlled. Fear made you careful, fear made you thorough, fear made you dangerous. The drone's hum faded into the distance. Clear, Torres confirmed. Maya placed the second charge, then the third. Each one was positioned at a critical structural point, designed to create a cascade failure that would bring down the entire relay array. The explosion would be visible from orbit, a brilliant flower of destruction that would announce to the galaxy that humanity was still fighting. Charges set, she reported. 2 minutes to extraction. They moved through the tunnel system with practiced stealth, their route carefully planned to avoid patrol patterns and sensor sweeps. Behind them, the charges counted down with digital precision, each second bringing them closer to a strike that would cripple Dominion communications across 3 star systems. Maya thought of her brother, killed in the bombardment of New Geneva. She thought of her parents, who had died in the refugee camps on Titan. She thought of the thousands of humans who had been relocated to Dominion work camps, never to be seen again. The explosion lit up the night sky like a second sun. Across the galaxy, similar strikes were occurring with synchronized precision. On Proxima 3, General Marcus Cain's team had infiltrated the planet's main power distribution center. Their charges timed to detonate at the exact moment the communication relay fell. The resulting blackout would last for days, crippling mining operations and forcing the Dominion to divert resources from frontline positions. At the same time, Dr. Sarah Kim's cyber warfare specialists were launching a coordinated assault on the Dominion's quantum data networks. From hidden servers scattered across human space, they injected viruses and logic bombs into the alien communication systems, creating cascading failures that would take weeks to fully repair. The attacks were carefully orchestrated to appear random, each one designed to look like an isolated incident rather than part of a coordinated campaign. But the cumulative effect was devastating. Within hours, the Dominion had lost communication with 17 star systems. Their supply lines were in chaos, and their military commanders were operating blind. Admiral Zethkar, Supreme Commander of the Dominion 4th Fleet, stood in his flagship's command center watching the tactical display with growing alarm. Red warning indicators flashed across the holographic map, each one representing a critical system failure or communication breakdown. "Status report," he demanded, his forearms gesturing with barely controlled frustration. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Kepler Station Relay, the Proxima 3 mining operation, and the Tau Ceti supply depot," reported his aide, a young Dominion officer whose scaled hide showed the pale coloration of extreme stress. "Additionally, we're receiving fragmented reports of power failures, equipment malfunctions, and communication blackouts across multiple sectors. Sabotage unknown, sir. The incidents appear to be random equipment failures, but the timing is suspicious." Admiral Zethkar's primary eyes narrowed as he studied the pattern of failures. Random equipment breakdowns didn't occur in perfect synchronization across multiple star systems. Someone was coordinating these attacks, someone with detailed knowledge of Dominion infrastructure and the capability to strike at will. "Double all security patrols," he ordered. "Institute Code 7 protocols on all remaining communication nodes, and begin a full investigation into these equipment failures." But even as he gave the orders, Zethkar knew he was fighting an enemy he couldn't see, couldn't predict, and couldn't catch. The humans were supposed to be beaten, their military forces scattered, and their colonies under firm Dominion control. Yet somehow, they were still fighting back with a coordination and effectiveness that suggested something far more dangerous than random resistance cells. They were fighting a war in the shadows, and the Dominion was losing. Chapter 4. Planning the final assault. Humanity's countdown to victory. This is it, the final stage. For Elara Voss, for Marcus Cain, and for every soldier who has fought in the shadows, this is the moment that will define them. A united front, the greatest strike against the Dominion yet, and the chance to turn the tide of the war forever. The abandoned mining facility on Ceres had been dark for 3 years. Its tunnels and chambers left to gather dust after the Dominion declared the asteroid's resources depleted. Tonight it blazed with activity as resistance leaders from across the galaxy gathered for the most important meeting in human history. Commander Elara Voss stood at the center of the facility's main chamber, her weathered face illuminated by the glow of holographic displays that showed the disposition of forces across known space. Around her, the greatest minds of the human resistance had assembled, generals who had fought impossible odds, scientists who had turned household items into weapons of war, and ordinary citizens who had become extraordinary through sheer necessity. First phase was a complete success, Elara began, her voice carrying clearly through the cavern. "We've disrupted their communications, crippled their supply lines, and forced them to divert resources from frontline positions. But that was just the beginning." General Marcus Cain stepped forward, his grizzled features set in lines of grim determination. "Our intelligence suggests the Dominion is struggling to maintain control over their outer territories. They've pulled 3 battle fleets back from the front lines to secure their supply routes. Which creates exactly the opportunity we need," added Dr. Sarah Kim, her fingers dancing across a portable computing interface. "The Dominion homeworld's defenses are now at their weakest point in decades. If we're going to strike at the heart of their empire, this is our chance." The holographic display shifted, showing a 3-dimensional representation of the Dominion capital system. The homeworld hung in the center like a jewel, surrounded by orbital platforms, defensive stations, and patrol fleets. It was the most heavily defended system in the galaxy, protected by technologies that humanity barely understood. "The plan is ambitious," Elara continued. "Phase 2 will involve coordinated strikes on 12 key systems simultaneously. We'll target their remaining communication hubs, their primary shipyards, and their strategic resource depots. The goal is to create total chaos in their command structure." Captain Rodriguez raised his hand. "What about casualties?" "Some of these targets are in civilian areas. We'll minimize collateral damage wherever possible," Elara replied. "But we can't let humanitarian concerns prevent us from ending this war." The Dominion showed no mercy to our civilians. The silence that followed was heavy with moral complexity. Every person in the chamber had lost family members, friends, and comrades to Dominion brutality. The desire for revenge burned in their hearts like a star-going supernova, but they also understood that their actions would define not just their own fate, but the future of human civilization. Phase 3, Elara continued, will be the final assault on the Dominion homeworld itself. We'll have one chance to strike at their seat of power, to decapitate their leadership and end their ability to wage war against humanity. The holographic display zoomed in on the homeworld, showing the massive cities, the government complexes, and the military installations that controlled an empire spanning dozens of star systems. It was a target that had seemed impossible just months ago, but the resistance had grown stronger with each successful operation. "How do we get past their defenses?" asked Lieutenant Commander Park. "We don't," Marcus Cain said with a cold smile. "We go through them. Every ship we can steal, salvage, or build. Every weapon we can manufacture or capture. Every fighter who's willing to die for human freedom, we throw everything at them in one massive coordinated assault." "It's a suicide mission," someone said from the back of the chamber. Maybe Elara acknowledged, "but it's also our only chance to end this war on our terms. The Dominion expects us to fight defensively, to hide in the shadows and pick at their edges. They're not prepared for a direct assault on their homeworld." She gestured, and the display showed projected fleet movements, supply lines, and defensive positions. "We have assets they don't know about, sleeper agents in their military hierarchy, sympathizers among their own species who've grown tired of their empire's brutality, hidden weapons, caches, and secret shipyards scattered across the galaxy. The coordination required," Dr. Kim began, "will be unprecedented," Elara finished, "which is why we need every resistance cell, every rebel group, every human who still believes in freedom to be ready. This isn't just about revenge anymore. It's about the future of our species." The chamber erupted in quiet conversations as the resistance leaders absorbed the magnitude of what was being proposed. They were talking about taking the war directly to the enemy's stronghold, about risking everything they had built in a single desperate gamble for ultimate victory, but they were also talking about ending the war, about freeing humanity from Dominion rule, about ensuring that future generations would never have to live in the shadows, never have to watch their loved ones die, never have to choose between resistance and submission. "I know what I'm asking," Elara said quietly, her voice cutting through the conversations. "I know the risks, I know the cost, but I also know that if we don't act now, if we don't take this chance, then everything we've sacrificed will have been for nothing." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every resistance leader, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. "Are you with me, not just for this battle, but for the final victory, for the complete liberation of humanity?" One by one, they nodded their agreement, some with fear, some with excitement, all with the understanding that they were about to attempt something that would either end the war or destroy the resistance entirely. The Shadow War was about to become something far more dangerous, a final gamble that would determine the fate of two civilizations. Chapter 5, The Moment of Decision. The price of victory. Revenge can never erase the pain, but justice. Justice is what we fight for. For our families, for the galaxy, and for those who cannot fight. We will win, not just for the past, but for the future. The Resistance Command Center hummed with activity as final preparations for the assault began. Holographic displays showed the positions of stolen ships, hidden weapons caches, and sleeper agents scattered across the galaxy. In 72 hours, they would launch the most audacious military operation in human history. Commander Elara Voss stood alone in her private quarters, staring at a photograph that had somehow survived the bombardment of her homeworld. It showed her younger self in a Dominion uniform, shaking hands with Admiral Zethkar at her graduation ceremony. She had been so proud that day, so certain that she was serving a cause greater than herself. Now she was preparing to destroy everything she had once sworn to protect. Commander Maya Chen's voice came through the "The team leaders are requesting a final briefing." Elara placed the photograph face down on her desk. "I'll be right there." The main briefing room was packed with resistance fighters from across the galaxy. Some were veterans of the Shadow War, their faces bearing the scars of years spent fighting impossible odds. Others were newcomers, refugees from recently conquered worlds who had arrived with nothing but rage and determination. "In 7 hours, we will launch the final phase of Operation Reckoning," Elara began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. "Every resistance cell, every rebel group, every human who still believes in freedom will coordinate their efforts for one massive assault on the Dominion homeworld." She gestured, and the holographic display showed the target system in all its heavily defended glory. The casualties will be enormous. The chances of success are marginal at best. Some of you will not survive the next 72 hours. The silence in the room was absolute. I need you to understand what we're fighting for, Elara continued. This isn't about revenge, though we all carry that fire in our hearts. This isn't about survival, though that's certainly part of it. This is about the future of our species. About ensuring that no human child will ever again have to grow up in a Dominion work camp. About proving that freedom is worth any sacrifice. She paused, looking around the room at the faces of men and women who had given up everything for this moment. I've been a soldier for most of my life. I've seen the best and worst of what sentient beings can do to each other. I've watched civilizations rise and fall, watched entire species disappear into the dark, and I've learned that the only thing that truly matters is the choice we make when everything is on the line. We can choose to accept defeat, to live as slaves in the shadows of our former glory, or we can choose to fight, to risk everything, for the chance to be free. I've made my choice. Now you must make yours. The room erupted in voices as resistance fighters spoke over each other, some expressing doubt, others voicing their determination. But gradually, a consensus emerged. They had come too far, sacrificed too much, to turn back now. For the fallen, someone shouted from the back of the room. For the future, another voice added. For humanity. The entire room responded in unison. Felt tears she hadn't known she was holding back spill down her cheeks. These people, these impossibly brave men and women, were about to attempt something that would either liberate their species or destroy it entirely. And they were doing it not for glory or conquest, but for the simple right to exist as free beings. Phase 1 launches in 72 hours, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Communications blackout begins in 60. I want every team in position, every weapon checked, every contingency planned for. We will not get a second chance at this. As the resistance fighters filed out of the briefing room, each one carrying their piece of the massive operation, Elara remained behind. The weight of command had never felt heavier, the responsibility for so many lives pressing down on her shoulders like a physical force. General Marcus Cain approached her, his weathered face showing the strain of their preparations. Second thoughts. Every day, Elara admitted, but not about the mission. About whether I have the right to ask so many people to die for my vision of the future. It's not your vision, Marcus said quietly. It's theirs. It's humanity's. You're just the one brave enough to give it voice. She nodded, understanding the truth of his words but not finding comfort in them. Leadership meant making impossible choices, accepting responsibility for outcomes beyond your control, and living with the consequences of decisions made in the crucible of war. Marcus, she said as he turned to leave, if I don't make it through this, ... You will, he interrupted. Because you have to. Because they need you to. Because the future depends on it. Left alone in the briefing room, Elara looked up at the holographic display showing the Dominion homeworld. In 72 hours, that peaceful-looking planet would become a battlefield that would determine the fate of civilizations. The Resistance had spent years preparing for this moment, but she wondered if they truly understood what they were about to unleash. War was never clean, never simple, never without consequences that echoed through generations. But sometimes, when the alternative was the complete subjugation of your species, war became the only choice that preserved any hope for the future. The countdown had begun. Chapter 6. Conclusion. The Resistance's path forward. The war is far from over, but the Resistance has taken its first steps toward victory. The Dominion may be strong, but the human spirit is unyielding. Soon they will see the price of their actions, and the shadows will no longer be enough to hide their tyranny. The first wave of the assault began at 050 hours, Galactic Standard Time, as Resistance fighters across 12 star systems launched simultaneous attacks on Dominion communication hubs. The strikes were precise, coordinated, and devastating, the culmination of months of planning and years of preparation. On the bridge of the stolen Dominion cruiser Retribution, Commander Elara Voss watched the tactical display as reports streamed in from across the galaxy. Each green indicator represented a successful strike, each red one a mission that had encountered unexpected resistance. The pattern that emerged was one of overwhelming success punctuated by heroic sacrifice. Kepler, station relays down, reported Chen from her position at the communications console. Captain Rodriguez confirms complete destruction of the Tau Ceti hub. Dr. Kim's cyber warfare teams have successfully infiltrated the quantum network. Casualties, Elara asked. Lighter than projected. Maya replied. The Dominion was caught completely off guard. They're scrambling to respond, but their command structure is in chaos. The bridge of the Retribution hummed with activity as resistance fighters who had spent years hiding in the shadows now operated in the open. Their stolen vessel leading a ragtag fleet of converted freighters, captured warships, and jury fighters toward the most heavily defended system in the galaxy. Phase 2 is a go, Elara announced. All units, commence final approach to the Dominion homeworld. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, their ships appearing on Dominion sensors like ghosts materializing from the void. For a moment, the entire system seemed to hold its breath as the defenders tried to process what they were seeing. Then the orbital defense platforms opened fire. The battle for the Dominion homeworld began with a fury that lit up the darkness between worlds. Resistance fighters who had spent years conducting guerrilla warfare now found themselves engaged in a stand-up fight against the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Ships that had been cobbled together from spare parts and determination faced off against state-of-the-art warships, crewed by professional soldiers. But the Resistance had advantages that the Dominion hadn't anticipated. Years of fighting in the shadows had taught them to be creative, to improvise, to find victory in situations that seemed hopeless. More importantly, they were fighting for something the Dominion forces couldn't understand, the simple right to exist as free beings. Torpedoes away, announced Marcus Cain from the gunnery station. Target the orbital platform at bearing 27 Mark 6. The Retribution shuddered as it absorbed return fire from the Dominion defenses, but the shields held. Around them, the Resistance fleet pressed forward, each ship carrying fighters who had lost everything to the Dominion and were determined to make the enemy pay for every inch of space. Incoming transmission, Maya reported. It's from the Dominion homeworld. Put it through, Elara ordered. The main viewer flickered to life, showing the scaled features of Admiral Ethkar, the same officer who had once been Elara's commanding officer, the same alien who had ordered the execution of human children. On Epsilon 7, Commander Voss, the Admiral said, his four eyes reflecting a mixture of surprise and grudging respect. I should have known you were behind this madness. Hello, Admiral, Elara replied, her voice steady despite the chaos raging around them. I told you once that the human spirit couldn't be broken. I hope you're beginning to understand what I meant. You're throwing away lives for nothing, Zeth said. Even if you somehow manage to penetrate our defenses, you cannot hold what you conquer. The Dominion will rebuild, and your resistance will be crushed. Perhaps Elara acknowledged. But our children will grow up knowing that we tried, that we fought, that we refused to accept slavery as the price of survival. The transmission cut out as the Retribution pressed deeper into the system, its weapons blazing as it carved a path toward the planet that had been the source of so much suffering. Behind them, the Resistance fleet followed, each ship a testament to the indomitable nature of the human spirit. The battle was far from over, but something fundamental had changed. The Resistance was no longer hiding in the shadows, no longer content to strike at the edges of the Dominion's power. They were fighting in the open, risking everything for the chance to be free. In the depths of space, where the light of distant stars barely penetrated the darkness, the future of two civilizations hung in the balance. The Resistance had taken its first steps toward victory, but the path ahead remained uncertain, fraught with dangers that would test the very limits of human courage and determination. But for the first time in years, hope burned bright in human hearts. The Shadow War was ending, and the battle for freedom had truly begun. As the Retribution and its fleet pressed toward the Dominion homeworld, Elara Voss stood on the bridge and thought about the photograph she had left behind, the image of her younger self. So certain of her place in the galaxy. That person was gone, replaced by someone who understood that freedom was worth any sacrifice, any price. The war was far from over. But the Resistance had proven something that the Dominion had never expected, that the human spirit could not be broken, could not be conquered, could not be extinguished. And in the end, that might be enough to change the fate of the galaxy. The countdown to victory had begun. This space battle epic explores the themes of resistance, sacrifice, and the price of freedom through the lens of humanity's shadow war against the Dominion. The narrative follows Commander Elara Voss and her fellow resistance fighters as they transition from guerrilla warfare to open rebellion, culminating in a desperate assault on the enemy's homeworld. Through intense combat sequences, moral dilemmas, and personal revelations, The story examines how ordinary people become extraordinary when fighting for the survival of their species and the right to be free. Asterisk.